Benefit from no ATM fees nationwide with a Columbia Bank Advantage Plus checking account. Use any ATM anywhere nationwide for total convenience. Make any ATM your ATM. For Advantage Plus checking, receive credit up to 10 surcharges or $30 per statement cycle, whichever is less at domestic ATMs not owned by us that charge a transaction surcharge. Maximum rebate of $360 for 12 statement cycles. All offers are subject to be withdrawn at any time. Member FDIC, count on Columbia.
Media for the politically aware.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
There you go. You are live, Janet and Sasha.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. And our producer is Thomas Becker, also known as a Mad Painter. And today we have a show featuring Dan Willis, who is one of Disclosure Project's top secret military witnesses that testified at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. in 2001 in front of every major media. Uh-oh, are we offline again? Okay. Mad, can you hear us?
We're live.
Okay, I just heard a very strange sound. Like we
I
got
took us
disconnected.
out of the other conversation so it wouldn't get messed up.
Excellent. Okay, this was a World Disclosure event which asked for a congressional hearing in order to bring forth the witness scientists within Black projects who can release the technologies derived from extraterrestrial reverse engineering, and that's been hidden for over 70 years now. 70 years ago when Roswell happened. That could stop further damage to our planet. But instead, the message was sanitized by controlled mainstream media. We've had Dan on our show many times before. We're so excited he's back. We're going to talk about all kinds of wonderful things. And we have a page for Dan up on Cory-09.com. Please do take a few minutes during your busy day and go over and look at that and see who this amazing man is. Go ahead, Sasha. What would you like to say?
Oh, just we're really interested in the secret space program. So many people from so many different angles have corroborated each other's stories, and we see different parts of the picture from every direction. And so I know you've been putting it together too. And so we really would like to know what the bigger picture is that's emerging in your mind about just what is the secret space program, what's going on.
So, welcome, Dan.
Oh, I have no idea. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, cool. Well, we thought you had all the answers.
But what are the people?
Hey, it's good to be back on with you.
Yeah,
we're glad you're here. Well, you must have some ideas. You're an incredible researcher.
Speculate.
We like speculation.
Well, there's there's so many indicators of the validity of the secret space program. We had, besides Nazi Germany, developing it in the 30s, and by 1954 in October, we developed anti-gravity. We're about 2 decades behind Nazi Germany. There's just so many indicators. Anybody who researches into it, it just makes sense. One of the things I got involved with after the National Press Club back in 2001, since we were attempting to bring forth the scientists within these unacknowledged special access Black projects that could prove that we've had a solution to get off of nuclear oil and coal for over 70 years, since the Bush administration denied a congressional hearing, not a big surprise. Dr. Greer set up a corporation, and we had a database of about 300 inventors. And I flew around the planet with Professor Ted Loiter, meeting some of these scientists and inventors. I did this worked with them for a couple of years and did it on my own, total over 10 years, meeting with scientists and working with them. So many have received, well over 5,000 have received national security orders, which means that anything that can give us a solution has been deemed a detriment to the national security of the United States, according to the gag order that these scientists receive. And if you look at how this came about, it came about through a secret system that the U.S. patent had called the Sensitive Application Warning System. It's been active for some time, which means that any solar panel that's over, I think 25% efficient, or anything that's, quote, anti-gravity, or, anything that seems to violate the known laws, right, of physics, automatically gets slapped one of these national security orders. So, we have to keep filling up gasoline for our cars and dealing with dangerous leaking nuclear power plants and, wearing face masks because of the coal,
We heard that they have...
Wait. You can talk next. Dan, we've been interviewing a lot of secret space program people, whistleblowers, people who've been in the 20 and Back program. And, that's been in place for a long time. They're not letting any of these new technologies out that could actually heal the planet and cure diseases and increase human longevity, etc. So looking at that, to me, I'll just say me, it seems there's some kind of terraforming project going on here with an agenda to, keep us short-lived, perhaps the depopulation bomb to, wipe out the population. Because we're looking at situations now with the newest hurricane and one coming inland soon in the next few days, the mass, here's Houston, the fourth largest city in the United States, and it's just massively destroyed. So what do you think's going on based on that? It seems like they're forming it for their own agenda, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's a war going on behind the scenes that the mainstream media is not letting us become aware of. When I was looking at, studying Tompkins' material extensively and collaborated with Dr. Sala on some of the Freedom of Information Act documents, we have, 320 and Back. You have, Michael Ralph came out, then Randy Kramer, then Corey Good, and they all claim to be 20 and Back. And of course, you're not going to come back with documentation or proof with something like that.
Right.
But William Tompkins, who, interestingly enough, Admiral Hugh Webster back in 2001, told Bill Tompkins, Bill, he wanted to check to make sure it was okay to release some of the stuff because he's talking about classified, operations. And he said, yeah, Bill, tell it all. It's most important to our country's future, to tell the whole story. And, my involvement with the Disclosure Project happened because of not only, because of the Lawrence Rockefeller initiative, which got Clinton to try to look into the stuff, which James Woolsey was denied access, which brought Dr. Greer into a meeting, which that was back in 93. And then in 97, when Dr. Greer with astronaut Edgar Mitchell met with Admiral Tom Wilson, who was the head of Joint Chiefs of Intelligence, for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I mean, that's pretty high. Showed him a list of these unacknowledged special access projects, which curiously, I back in '93, the first meeting with Bob Lazar coming out of Area 51, a little town called Rachel, Nevada, right outside the base, I met with him, John Leard, about a dozen people there. And what happened was a NRO classified advisory came out that had a distribution list of all these, cosmic ops, magi ops, all these different unacknowledged special access programs. There was a meeting just before that happened in '91, which he gave Admiral Tom Wilson, and he was able to look up these projects and found out, yes, they did exist, but he was being denied access. Ever since they essentially murdered Kennedy, they've been doing these operations outside of our legal constitutional government. So, Admiral Tom Wilson, head of Joint Chiefs of Intelligence, said, if you can gather the people together, go before them, you can have my permission to go before the media. This group is illegal. And so, by the year 2000, I was the 100th videotape witness, of which they've collected by 2,450 military intelligence witnesses. 20 of them were willing to go before the National Press Club, of which I was one, to try to alert the people. But the mainstream media did what the CIA calls a limited hangout. In other words, they covered the event, but they, when it came out to say, oh, well, the Disclosure Project wants to have a congressional hearing based on the reality of UFOs, which of course isn't going to gather much attention. But the whole fact that we said that we have the scientists that can prove we have the technologies that can come out to the world, beside, 57 species, NASA airbrushing the UFOs out, nukes being shut down, bases on the other side of the moon, all the explosive stuff was carefully sanitized out. Only the limited hangout, which was coined back during the Nixon administration, back during Watergate, which curiously enough, what was his name? Howard. Anyway, the CIA guy who was in charge of the thing, he had an interview with that before he went to jail on the whole thing, and he said the main reason they were trying to cover up on the T. Hunt, it was Hunt was the name, said that because of the alien presence, that was the main reason why Nixon got taken down with the whole Watergate thing. So anyway, the limited hangout procedure is very effective.
So what did Nixon do that the alien presence took him down? Was he talking too much, or was it the other? What was going on? That they? You said that they Nixon down because of the alien presence. Can you explain that correlation? What you just said there?
Well, we have apparently, Nazi Germany entered into an agreement with, according to the indicators, it's hard to get absolute proof on this, but there's so many indicators and witnesses that talking about it that they entered into an agreement back in 1933 with the reptilian race down in Antarctica. And then it wasn't until, Eisenhower had the meeting in 54 at Murdoch Air Force Base. And then by 1955, apparently, this brings into the secret space program. And apparently they entered into the agreement with the same group the Nazi Germany entered into with the industrial military complex that Eisenhower tried to warn us about, that only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry, like through the alternative media, could be aware of this kind of stuff. But what seems to happen is that, I think Tompkins was right on, and his documentation that backs up who he is supports, his testimony. Bless his heart, he just passed away during the eclipse.
Right.
Anyway, what was happening was, back in 1942, when there was like 5 discs that were extraterrestrial origin that were unmanned, the the War of L.A.
Right.
Two of them got shot down. One went to the Army Air Force, the other one to the Navy. The Navy took it to China Lake, and the Army Air Force took it to Wright-Patterson, and they did the reverse engineering operations. And all this was under the control of the RAND Corporation in Santa Monica, or the RAND Project RAND, rather. But what happened was the Air Force believed it had jurisdiction over everything in the skies, and the Navy, just anything that floats out in the water, right? So General Hapgard, what was the name, I believe, one of the Air Force generals working with Project RAND brought in a huge amount of money. What this effectively did was push the Navy out, and the Navy went into its own secret program while the Air Force basically dominated Project RAND. And then 1948, 1949, it then turned into the RAND Corporation. This was about the same time that they suicided James Forrestal, because Forrestal wanted to release the information. And the Air Force, Lee May and the other ones, they vehemently didn't want that to happen. And so it seems that ever since that time, leading up to about 1955, when they entered into an agreement. One of our witnesses, General Lovkin, who was on Eisenhower's staff, knew that Eisenhower was losing control to the corporations, and Eisenhower was speaking about it and then saying that, it's not going to be in the best of hands. He was really troubled about it. He shared his concerns with Kennedy, at meetings at Camp David, before changing command. So it seems as though, it's all you can do is research this stuff, and what I like to use as a foundation, because anybody can say anything, right?
Right.
What I like to use as a foundation is we've got over 500 Disclosure Project witnesses, which include astronauts, admirals, generals. I mean, if all those people are making up stuff, then that's weirder, than what's happening. And then you have all these authenticated top secret documents that kind of paint the picture. And as you put all this together based on that as your foundation, it almost appears, the indications that, in Nazi Germany, Xavier Dorsch was Adolf Hitler's main man that designed these massive underground facility, which they had millions of slaves working for them. From concentration camps and stuff. And Operation Paperclip, they brought Xavier Dorsch over right after the war and started the, quote, underground plant program for the United States, starting in New Mexico in the Monsanto Mountains, and started tunneling and boring out. Now we have in the hundreds, I think it was like 312 or something. Don't quote me exactly. Anyway, it's hundreds of underground, huge, massive complexes of which we have no idea what's going on. We have millions of people missing, unaccounted for. We have on CNN, Robert Steele talking on Alex Jones. Alex Jones got the rap for it. Talking about the slave base on Mars, which Corey Good speaks of.
And that's what we interviewed. I don't know if you heard of Tony Rodriguez and what's Penny's last name? Penny. There's 20 and back. Penny's been 3 times, so she's 60 and back. And they both go into. I recommend listening to their YouTubes, and we did a couple interviews. But apparently, there's a huge part of the world population that gets taken to these slave colonies, and
Billy Carson says the missing from the FEMA camps in New Orleans are
right. So the missing people are being used as slave, and so that the slave population is being is an exchange system for the universe. What do we have of value? human slaves. So that seems to be one of the major means of commerce in this, besides the secret space program and all the technologies we don't have, but they're taking people and putting them in slave colonies on the moon, Mars. Rodriguez was on Ceres, further out in the solar system. So we're getting some of the pieces, and so I wonder what you got.
But there was just this, obviously a part of white hats in government that have sponsored you, Dan, and other people in breaking the embargo and releasing the technology. There's some forces that approve of and are encouraging you to do what you're doing.
Right. There seems to be different factions that are supporting freeing the population of the earth in this ongoing. It's not just child trafficking; it's just human trafficking throughout the planet and into the whole solar system, and maybe beyond. So anyway, I just wanted to add that that's what we're discovering, and that's part of why Eisenhower was compromised, because apparently there was a higher force that came and said the Earth doesn't really own the Earth, we own it, and it's not just abductions for the purpose of the normal abduction experience for the hybridization process and experimenting on humans, but we're taking people and they're not coming back. Slave trade, yeah.
Yeah, thank God for the white hats behind the scenes, because of their control of perception management, through the mainstream media, and now we're becoming aware of, their influence through Google, Facebook, YouTube, and the fact that, the CIA and NSA had, starting back in 1999, In-Q-Tel, what it was doing is it was working on seeding and funding certain companies, like Google just seems like such a playful, fun little name, like sounds like childlike, but
right.
They can infiltrate all these operations and basically become an extension of their perception management that's already well developed and refined, that's on the mainstream media through the 5 corporations that control everything we see and hear. So the only reason, I don't sell books or CDs. I never made one penny ever at doing any of this. The only reason I do a talk show is, maybe, just we have an opportunity to speak out and to, I'm just concerned about all the people that are watching CNN and, all the mainstream medias that haven't really an idea of how this all came about. And, when I went to Washington, I was completely naive. And when CBS came to do a special interview alone with me, and I said, I'm not doing this interview unless I can say, because I saw what CNN did, we have these scientists that can prove we have a solution to help the world, to get off these dangerous, obsolete technologies. She promised, and it was almost in tears, saying, I'm sorry, the higher executives, which are, we now all know are CIA, NSA,
right.
made me edit that part out. So I started to become aware, and it wasn't until 2014 that a media company out of Hollywood wanted me to write an article on media control, since I used to be an ABC newsman. I used to broadcast engineer for the most powerful FM station on the West Coast for many years. So I gladly accepted it, because I was trying to figure out what the heck did I get involved in, and why is the media, so carefully making sure that none of the really explosive information that would definitely get anybody off their couch and think, what the, it's like sanitizing this out. And so, I had to put together a chronology, and I put it up on the webmatrix.net. And the article was called, Who Controls the Agreed Upon Reality Through the Mainstream Media, and Why They Fear Disclosing the Truth About the Extraterrestrial Reality. And it basically was an education for myself, based on these documents and witnesses, and then my own firsthand experiences as I traveled around the country, the major cities where we set up, thing for the executive briefing, and I saw how the network affiliates in every major city, purposely made fun of it, using the giggle factor. And so,
Right.
so that's kind of like, being an ex-ABC newsman, I feel like the perception management that they're doing to the entire planet is what needs to be exposed. Because, if everybody knew exactly what was going on, humanity wouldn't put up with it.
Yeah, it seems to me that what we really are dealing with, that the press is culpable of accessory after murder, because that's what's behind not just disclosing about the ET presence and the misery that not having the technology has caused, but the direct false flags and other things that have been done to divert our attention. It means that the press, knowing damn well what's really happening, has covered it up, and they're part of this mass murder. And we just have to have some kind of truth and reconciliation to ever get past this crap.
Absolutely. So it's important what both of you do on the alternative media to help get this information out. And as the secret space program whistleblowers, including Tompkins and Good and the rest of them, are saying, is that there is a split that happened between the Air Force and the Navy, and that it seems that the Department of the Navy, you have high levels, and that includes, the Marine Corps, which is under the Department of the Navy, is filled with a lot of white hats that are attempting to get the full disclosure out so we can stop this vicious cycle of deception. Deception doesn't do the whole of humanity any good, but if they're trying to put a spin on it through the Air Force, through different media outlets, and maybe Tom DeLonge on some of his information, thinking coming from high-level Air Force officers, this has got to be the real stuff. But there's actually a great fear that if the true story comes out, there'll be tribunals of crimes against humanity if the full thing came out. So, there's this little thing going on, and it's really a sad loss that Tompkins was 94, but
Well, I wanted to look a little bit more into Tompkins' role. What he had his book selected by extraterrestrials. I think it came out 2 years ago. He managed to create a great level of awareness, but I don't think all of our listeners know exactly what Tompkins represented and what he was able to accomplish. I wanted to talk about that. But, just one thought on this. It's everybody's complicit in a way, because they're participating in the system. Yeah. Like if you go to the hospital, the nurses and doctors all are enlisted into this program of these medicines that, kill us, and the people involved in the energy system.
They're going to
lose jobs and way of life.
The pharmaceutical industry, starting with the Scripps Institute, back when we started bringing over paper clips. So they definitely infiltrated the pharmaceutical industries. You look at all what happened after 9/11. 1 week after was the anthrax thing, right? Then Bush started Operation BioShield, which made millions of these vaccines on the island of Realms, which was a little island off of Germany, which was Heinrich Himmler's bioweapons laboratory back during Nazi Germany. And the Supreme Court has ruled that the use of these vaccines, if it kills you, the pharmaceutical companies have no liability, because just due to the nature, they're unsafe. And so, and then you have congressmen saying, hey, these military and law enforcement are being trained to use, these vaccinations and stuff like that, and what they're doing with the GMOs in our food, the fluoride in our water. They're definitely weaponizing it against the population. It's, my
everybody's involved. You have all the people in the military with all their jobs, and they have their nice lifestyles and their fancy cars and their houses, and put their kids through school, because all down through the realms. There's so many people that are involved and enlisted into the current system and maintaining it the way it is, because they'll lose their way of life and their right livelihood, or their jobs and income and benefits from retirement. So that's the major problem. Is we've got this huge system, which is we can see it beginning, and it started. The major part started in World War II, but it probably goes back thousands of years with the Anunnaki. But we just followed through this slave system that's ongoing, and it's very complicated and intense, and it involves all levels. I'm sure that's what Eisenhower had to deal with, because it's like, how do we shift from this paradigm that is so deeply ingrained in our society to a world? This is a level zero civilization, probably a negative one, because it's involved in slavery. And no matter where you are in the pecking order, unless you're at the top, you're involved in some kind of, extreme service for other people or the corporate economic system. Anyway, what did you want to say, Sasha? Okay, nothing. So back to you. So we have this whole problem here, and you were going on a thread. Let me get back my notes. We were talking about Tompkins and his role, what he accomplished, what he brought to the surface. I recommend getting the book Selected by Extraterrestrials. I know there's 2 more books coming out about Tompkins, and you said, Dan, that you're working with Sala. Dr. Michael Sala is working to get this information about Tompkins in a 3rd book, and there's a 2nd book with a different party. So there's 2 books going on. Bob Wood is involved with it. What do you know about this part of the mystery? Tompkins, Wood, Corey Good, all those people that are bringing forth this piece of the puzzle.
Well, again, I think it's very important that Tompkins came out with his book after, several months after Corey Good became public. And many of the things that Tompkins talks about, which he had no idea, that, Good was coming out with all this stuff, collaborate very, very closely with each other. To me that, it's like, on different points, when you get different perspectives from different witnesses, you're going to have a certain amount of information that doesn't sound like it all fits together. But if on the general sense, on some of the basic elements that are going on, they seem to all agree on certain elements that are happening in the secret space program. One thing that seems very clear, again, is the Navy Department wanting this information to come out in full and totality, whereas they're trying to run a different narrative. So I think, Tompkins brought a lot of importance to the secret space program witnesses because of the documentation that he brought. He was a brilliant little 17-year-old with a photographic memory that could make all these entire models of ships in incredible detail, and they realized this kid's got a talent, And so what's interesting is my father worked at the same place that Tompkins was working. Wow. And I was talking to Michael Sala, and I was going back through. My dad was in World War II, defending against the Nazis in Iceland and the Korean War and stuff. And he worked at the North Island Naval Air Station for 20 years. And in an old chest that I had, I found one of his books, and it was from the 1940s, from the Naval Air Station San Diego, and it had all the personnel listed in it. On the front cover of the book has a big picture of President Truman and James Forrestal as the Secretary of the Navy. And sure enough, there was, it was Captain Rick Obota at the time. Later he became an Admiral Rick Obota, that was in charge of the Assembly Repair Department. Anyway, I sent that book to Michael Sala to see if he could use it for collaboration. Tompkins' testimony. He has, the very fact that he worked, he's got the documents that show that when Dr. DeBus, who was the head of NASA, who also worked with Heinrich Himmler and Hitler, the SS, and everything like that, he had a meeting with von Braun and DeBus, and they were very impressed, and they assigned him to the Lunar Operations Command, and he has documents to prove that. And I found it very fascinating during the time he was working for TRW, the time that we went to the moon, that he saw the reptilian giant spacecraft lined up along the crater, which he, with his photographic memory, he remembered the video screen and made a rendering of what that looked like, with a little tiny little lunar module down there like a speck, and these giant spacecraft lined up around to intimidate them and tell them, collect a couple of rocks, do a couple more missions, and go home and don't come back. And and that's what we did.
The monitor? Was that on the monitor that was beamed back to Earth from the moon?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they had a live video feed, but the people of Earth, they said, a camera overheated, and so the video dropped out, right? But in the meantime, ham radio operators, I'm a ham radio operator back in that time, I wasn't tracking the moon, but the very fact that they had to have a very directional antenna pointing at the moon, disputes anything that, people said, they just did low Earth orbit and they never went to the moon, radiation and all that. No, we did go to the moon. They were able to pick up the signals, and hearing Neil Armstrong and said, "Oh my God, they're huge," and talking about the alien spacecraft. Yeah. So it was kind of.
So the ham radio operator got to hear the live feed. Is that what you're saying?
Say again. I'm sorry, Janet.
Did you say that the ham radio operators got to hear the live feed, or they just got the signal? I'm sorry, I got confused there.
The people of Earth were watching the astronauts jumping around on the moon, which I think some of that video feed was from Stanley Kubrick's. They had to have something to drop in case something like this happened, and so.
Okay. That makes sense.
But what was happening was that, everybody has all these disputes, on the video. And, it's kind of interesting that NASA has one of the most important achievements of mankind, has lost the actual original video of the moon men, all these little things. It was 1969. I remember when I was working with a high-level security clearance at the Blockhouse Naval Communication Station, San Francisco. I was going to work, looking at the officers' quarters. They had a black and white TV there, and watching the astronauts jumping around on the moon. At least I think it was black and white. At least the video feed was black and white.
Oh yeah, black and white. Most of us, yeah.
Yeah. And that was the time that I received my report of a ship off the coast of Alaska that the crew witnessed coming off of Port Bow, a 70-foot diameter glowing reddish-orange disk that came out and shot straight up into space. The ship's radar operator tracked the blips of estimated going over 7,000 miles per hour. This was a secret classified priority message going to the Chief of Naval Operations. And, when it was coming in through high-speed Morse code, and I was decoding it, typing it out on the typewriter, and, getting the authentication codes and everything. And,
wow.
I took thousands of messages, and that's the one that I thought, I want to go to the Xerox machine and make a copy, but then I thought, oh my God, it's 10 years in prison if I get caught. It's not worth it, So I just kind of remembered the best I can. That was a long time ago, So I contacted the Office of Naval Intelligence. I knew I had several particulars. It was from a USNS ship, which is a U.S. Navy supply ship. and they told me that, the records had been destroyed. So unlike the other witnesses that joined in Washington that had substantial evidence and documentation, I wasn't able to, come up with anything. Just had to have each one of us said we were willing to testify under oath before Congress after we gave our testimonies.
Uh-huh.
The dog ate your homework.
No, it wasn't worth 10 years in jail. No. No. Oh, that's interesting. I was in a UFO group and I heard the same story about the huge 70-foot diameter. It emerged underneath. It came up underneath the craft, and then it came up, shot up into. I guess it just. It kind of glowed underneath them, and then it shot up. I heard a man said he was on that ship when I was at the UFO group in Honolulu back in '93 or something. He was talking about it.
Some of the people are writing books about. I'm trying to remember his name, but what are they trying to hide? Underneath the underground bases and stuff like that. Also goes into, the military has these plans for underground, underwater bases as well. What a perfect place to keep away from prying eyes, especially if you have craft that doesn't have any issue with, going way deep into our oceans. So apparently,
right.
extraterrestrial and military.
I was in an underwater base one time. I won't take up this whole show here, but I actually am a witness to. I was taken during one of my abductions.
You've been into an underwater base?
Yes, off of Johnston Atoll.
Oh,
and then
tell me about this.
Well, it's a long story, but basically I had my typical abduction. I was working on Johnston Atoll as a civilian doing kind of administration work, and I had a boyfriend, and we were both taken to the underwater base. He was put on the tray, the metal tray, then they examined him and did things to him, and then I was taken further down into the installation where it went into huge underground natural caverns, and I was kind of like in an eyes wide shut ritual. There were about 1,000. I asked them who they are. They said they were the Anunnaki, very tall humanoid beings, and basically at the end of the ritual, we stood before a large obsidian wall, and there was a place where I stood, and as I stood in the middle of this circle, the wall dissolved, and on the other side was a huge reptilian, gigantic, like a dinosaur, and then it sent an avatar of itself to stand in front of us because it was gigantic, and it looked like a dragon. Closest thing you could say, it's like a dragon. And then I was kind of the key, and they started to telepathically communicate through me, and then everybody was communicating through me. Somehow, because of my genetics, I was, the key. They called me the key. And I apparently deciphered this information. It came from the 1,000 Anunnaki and this dragon back and forth to each other. And then they returned me to my bed, and then after that, I wanted off Johnston Atoll, so I worked to get out of my contract and get back to Honolulu. But I think they were done with me by then, so they allowed me to leave. But that was my role. And I called the dragon at the end of time.
Wow. Well, that's quite an experience. You know a lady named Karen Lister in New Zealand?
No, but I should get a hold of her. Karen Lister, okay.
Yeah, she was actually the one that got me to talk on, Coast to Coast and a number of talk shows. I was kind of shy. I didn't really want to get on, the radio and talk. She said, no, you should get on, you're a disclosure witness. You should get on the talk shows. And so she kind of encouraged me. But when she was 17, she got taken to one of the underwater bases and got to see some of the technology that they had, and how they could heal people and take in the sick bay, so to speak. They're able to cut an arm and then reverse time the cut and then cause it to heal. And this bed she was sleeping in that was kind of like an anti-gravity type of thing, and she noticed it was military working alongside with the very attractive, good-looking, as probably Nordics,
They're super beautiful. I can't explain it. They're hyper, physically hyper beautiful. They call them in the Anunnaki literature. They say they're the glowing ones, the glowing eyes, the glowing ones. It's almost like their molecules are moving faster or something. They glow. They glow. They're incredibly beautiful.
They're like Barbarella's boyfriend in the.
But most people don't know what that's about. That was too long ago. Anyway, so she said that they're very beautiful as well. Super attractive.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting what, Tompkins was saying about, the technologies that pharmaceutical, and they also have, scientific working with temporal fields to be able to, reverse age people. There's some link with consciousness and our aging process. Like Bruce Lipton says, our consciousness can alter and change. Scientifically, they've shown that it changes our DNA. So apparently,
well, it's like a belief system that they instilled upon us that we're supposed to live a certain time and die, and in a way, Aubrey de Grey says that we're being murdered at a rate of 100,000 a day because there are cures for these diseases, including the disease of aging. We do have extreme physical longevity and immortality, like the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki lived to be, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, and that's our potential. And then there's the excuse that, well, what will we do with the population? Well, we'll go off planet, obviously. We'll become a level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 civilization, and we'll have interstellar travel. But there's some faction that just wants to keep us lower mentality, controlled, manipulated, and slaves. And I thought, from what the Anunnaki said, that that slavery was illegal. But apparently in this quadrant of the universe or the galaxy or whatever, this is the prison planet. And on some level, we souls, because we're incarnated in these human forms, must have done something to offend somebody. Not meaning that we're necessarily evil, but we're over here quarantined. That's what I'm gathering, and so I'm looking for people that can discuss this issue on that next level. It's kind of like the story within the story within the story. What did Eisenhower learn? What really was behind that meeting? Is there anybody out there still alive that could come forth and tell us what happened behind those doors? Because apparently what he was told was that the reptilians own this planet. This is a colony, reptilian colony. That's why we have the reptilian DNA within us, because that was an agreement made many, 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 many years ago. And like it or not, they get to take their own. We are their, project, and they get to take us and do as they will.
That is the United States, and the Nazis made an agreement to work for the greater Draco Empire. That is what it boils down to. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the hypothesis.
Right, this is what we're getting, but who knows what's actually true. But
the only reason I think, all of us, I think we're all in the same line. We want to see the suffering stop on this planet and the deceptions exposed. And so the deceptions are what's causing the, I had to go to combat action in Vietnam because of the deception, because of the Gulf of Tonkin thing, all these false flags. Yeah. That are happening on this war, and these needless wars, and these people suffering, and the report from Iron Mountain that came out in '67 that said that and LBJ just hit the roof, had it suppressed for all time, kind of exposed the whole plan, which Werner von Braun did as well. That they're going to have one situation after another, just to keep continual conflict and war that keeps the powers that be in control. And,
right.
this this has got to stop.
Enough. But how do we do it? It's like we're on a train that's lost its brakes and it's going down the mountains, and we can't seem to stop this accelerated process. It's just, I mean, I'm 63 years old, and I watched my poor World War II father, who served in Italy, who helped liberate, Auschwitz, or the Italian Auschwitz, and his whole life he was in PTSD. He was very retracted, and I did what I could to bring him out, but he was shell shocked, and here we're doing it generation after generation. We're just we're taught to be patriots, but what, like John Lennon said, what's that about? We're taught to kill people that we don't know, that are across the planet, and now we do it remotely with drones. It's insanity. But where are those?
Every generation has a war, and so many young guys, in the Middle East, coming back with the PTSD, it's like, oh man, it's if they were able to release the technologies, there'd be places. There's enough room on this planet for everybody, and if we release the anti-gravity, we could probably move on to other planets. But the thing is that we have just, only because there's this veil of secrecy is the only thing that's keeping all of humanity on this planet from realizing the technologies that have been suppressed and hidden all these years, that could, so many things are fabricated and pitting us against each other, that, religions don't seem to help much on all that.
Well, they're part of, I mean, there's some real things behind religions, the consciousness and spirituality, but the dogma and the particulars are part of the control mechanism, the psychological manipulation that keeps us pitted against each other. And so we have, this patriotism and these different races and the different religions that separate us. And then even within the UFO community, we had this MUFON conference, and we had, the people that are experiencers and in the secret space program were against the nuts and bolts people like Richard Dolan. And so everywhere you go, people are using this trauma, division scenario to make a hype, to sell tickets, apparently, or to finance wars, which just keep us feeding this corporate machine.
And this is why the first CIA director, Admiral Hillenkotter, said, we tried to want to have open congressional hearings because of the, quote, dangers of secrecy. And then Kennedy, if everybody's aware of his speech regarding the dangers of secrecy and the secret societies, which ironically nothing but 33rd degree Freemasons and the Warren Commission said that there was no conspiracy involved with his murder.
Right.
But, and then they come out in, I think it was in around 60, in the 60s anyway, with a document that tried to get the CIA to use the term conspiracy theorist, against anybody that comes up with alternative views. And they've been using that same old technique all these decades later. And now they're using, fake news and all these other things. And there's indications that, the main outlets that we have, Facebook, YouTube, Google, and everything, they're changing their algorithms. They're doing everything possible in order to, as Edward Snowden revealed with the GHQ documents, where the sock puppets, trolls, and shills manage our perceptions to hide their operations.
So what can we do? And why are they even letting us talk about it? They control everything, but there's still allowing us to talk about
Jim
it.
Marrs says it makes them feel really strong that they can let us blab and we don't accomplish anything against
We're
it. We don't influence policy in the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's why we do these alternative media talk shows. But, you know, it does feel like we're preaching to the choir because the people listening are obviously fairly savvy enough that they've done their own homework and researched it enough that they are past ET 101 and that they and then past Secret Government 101.
There's more of them. Yeah.
We may be effective, and we are coming up on a break, which will be in about a minute or two. But it seems like we're preaching to the choir, yes, but it seems like the choir's growing, and we are effective in some way. But it makes me wonder, you know, are the powers that be so arrogant that they don't care that we increase our numbers? But then what you said is that they're changing the algorithms, and I don't know. It's very confusing. I wish somebody would come forth and explain it a little bit more what's going on here. But if you just look at it, you observe, we're still talking. And these shows are growing.
Well, they're working on it. They're desperately working on it. There's a whole lot of websites that have monitoring of their traffic. And all of a sudden, since March of this year, since Google, which controls YouTube, all of a sudden their traffic has all of a sudden dropped dramatically.
Yes, that's happened to me. Yes.
So it's happening right now. I don't know if Freedom Slips and Revolution Radio has been on their new algorithm for, we definitely don't do hate speech. We
picked it up back in about 5 minutes. Thank you. See you soon.
Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Hey folks, you got the Nighthawk here. Do you have a favorite host? Well, imagine if you will having all the broadcast shows from 2013 to listen to anytime you want. Awesome deal, huh? Anyway, so stop by freedomslips.com and order the entire 2013 library of your favorite host for just $30. Not only do you help with the station funding to keep us on the air, you also help the host because they get half of the net on every order. Also, we have Revolution Radio's all-time favorite shows all on one disc. The details are really broad, so you'll have to visit the website and go look at the details yourself. It's, again, www.freedomslips.com/season2013.htm. And get your favorites. First come, first serve, 7 to 21 days for delivery. Thank you. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps, including me. Later.
We've got to stop them! They're going to kill us all!
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. with your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Oscar's freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
See? Even your brain knows you're screwed.
Your body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting to danger. Unafraid. Right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You have it. That shouldn't have played. Go ahead. Janet?
We're back. Where's our drum roll? Okay.
I put the wrong one in. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay.
It's relevant.
We're back. The Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And I'm Janet Lessin with Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin and Thomas Becker, and we're here with Dan Willis. But before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to that donation button on freedomslips.com and do donate what you can. You know, $1, $5, $15, $20, $100, $1,000, $1 million, whatever you can donate is greatly, greatly, greatly appreciated. And we do thank you very much for taking the time and go over there and clicking and making your donation. And a Mad Painter, Thomas Becker, where are we? Did we meet?
Oh, we got about $70, but it's only the third, so.
Right. Did we make it last month?
We do want, we just made it last month, so we do hope to maybe have an excess at the end of this month. So get off that fiat currency and pass it on over here.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, Sasha, you want to say something before we bring back Dan?
Just so what we were looking at is the possibility that when the Nazis either had their own hovercraft or were in league with people that did, they made an alliance with the United States to bring over Nazi scientists and who to the United States, and basically they've infiltrated all levels of government and business, and they have an alliance with the Dracos. And on the other hand, we have the Navy, who has been tipped off by actually some kind of good forces, the real ladies, helping Thompson and the good Tompkins and the good and the White Hats to try to save whatever's left of what the ideals of democracy. We get people like Randy Kramer and Andy Bishago and you, Dan, who are like ambassadors of the good hats. And it just sounds like it's almost like us below, so above, too. There's all these alliances and slave colonies and all the junk going on in space that's going on here on Earth, too. And I don't know about this higher civilization stuff, because it sounds like they're at it, too.
What do you think, Dan? Back to you.
Yeah, well, indeed. Yeah, Andy, it's interesting, Andy Bisagio. I knew Andy back in 2004 before he went public. In fact, he wasn't even known. And in fact, I was hiring him for his lawyer services. And we talked for hours and hours, and I said, Andy, we got to get you as a Disclosure Project witness. But, Dr. Greer didn't want to bring him in because he didn't have, like Richard Dolan says, he didn't have the documentation or anything to back up what he was saying. But I told him, hey, for your own safety, you get on Coast to Coast, get on, and he got very visible, not only on alternative media, but on mainstream media too, which of course they made a laughing stock out of him, talking about the Martians and the jump rooms to Mars and everything. But, which is kind of strange because you'd think he would know that they would do that, and be kind of
Andy's very sweet. So how ironic, though, that you would have found him to be your attorney. It's almost like that's just the odds against that are just amazing. So how did you find him?
I was introduced to him through Albert Weber, who I worked with a long time ago on some projects with another disclosure witness. Anyway,
that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. You have all these people talking about the reptilian reality, right? I mean, but then you have, the Vatican in 2008 saying, all the extraterrestrials are all benevolent and they weren't born of original sin. So, and you've got all these different people, including Dr. Stephen Greer, Grant Cameron, who I'm doing a show with on Revolution Radio this Wednesday, with my detective friend Monique Lessin, Paola Harris. You have all these people saying there are no, benevolent ETs. They're all benevolent. But, I ask you, of anybody, how do you know that? And what do you base that on? I don't know for sure anything. And what information source do you have that I don't have that you're able to confirm that reality is true? That's my question to all these people. Maybe they have just not been. Dr. Greer has his sources, which is considerable. He has a number of sources, but that doesn't mean that all of them have been read into all these secret programs, which are highly, highly unacknowledged and, compartmentalized into the whole structure. Right. So not everybody knows everything that's going on. So to say that you know something for sure doesn't go over with me. I don't know. I think there's enough witnesses that have. And that one lady, I'm trying to remember her name. She was on with David Wilcock on Cosmic Disclosure. You probably remember her name, but she saw, a reptilian being. She was in the Air Force, interestingly enough, right? Air Force, reptilians, right? So,
Well, I've seen reptilians, and there was one that I interacted with for many, many, many years, like from age 4 to about age 12, and then I decided to take a different direction because I kept running into him when I went in the backyard through the alley. But I originally perceived him as being very evil because his energy was very high and different than the other extraterrestrials that I had been interacting with. But when I went into regression and hypnosis, I realized that he was not evil. He was just trying to communicate with me, and his vibratory frequency was not in alignment with mine, and it felt really weird, and so it scared me when he was trying to telepathically communicate with me. But and I've interviewed people that have had sex with reptilians.
So you actually had a face-to-face interaction?
Ongoing, yes, face-to-face, ongoing relationship with a reptilian.
Wow. Well,
and
you're one
many
person
years
that can say that.
Yeah. Well, I was terrified of him, though, and the poor guy was just trying to communicate with me. And then Misha Johnston has had ongoing interactions with reptilians, and she has some hybrid children, and she's used an artist and has these representations of what they look like, and they're actually very, very beautiful. The mixing of the humans and reptilian DNA. Her son is very handsome. But
and I'm sure some of them are pretty nice. I asked Dr. Greer in 2000. About the reptilians, and he said, "Oh, they're sweet." So I'm sure some of them are nice, but to discount to say that there is not a reptilian agenda working with the industrial military complex of the military.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't rule that out.
I think they're just as complicated as humans. Sasha wants to say something.
Oh well, Stuart Swerdlow, who. He's in contact with a Syrian, a regular contact. Basically, he got the message that after the Council of Hatona, when those races that settled Earth were given a chance to make a proto-human a being that could live on Earth, and 12 human groups and one reptile group gave their DNA, and the reptilian group gave the DNA to the brainstem part of us. So yes, where the reptilians are, one place they're in each of us. And what this is our ability to be survivors, to fight to the death, to be obsessed with hierarchy, who's on top, to be, and so that is a part of, and of course, each of these groups that contributed tried to make their genes dominant, according to Swerdlow, and the reptilians felt they could really, if they could manipulate people's brainstem, that's where they would get in with their programming. So that's one of the places the reptilians are. They're in us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we have a little bit of Nazi reptilian in all of us, don't we?
We do, yes. One of the things that Teresa J. Morris, who's another host here on Revolution Radio, I work with her on Saturdays. She says that she was a commander on board of a large craft outside of Mars that had a million personnel, and they were guarding a wormhole, and there was a being that was, they called it the Wharf, they were Wolfen, and they would come through and they would absolutely destroy any planet, totally rape it and leave it a charred cinder, nothing left, no life left at all. And so that was the other polar end of the continuum of existence. The polarity was created, good and evil, light and dark, to create this continuum upon which we play out this passion play of life and existence. And we define ourselves by what we like or dislike, what we're in polar opposite of. And so the beings that were on this craft that she worked with, they had no ability to defend themselves. They couldn't hit. They couldn't kill. And so they needed to have soldiers. So the humans have the ability. We can kill. We can hit. We can perceive ourselves as self and not self. These extraterrestrials on board the ship are so high and enlightened that it's difficult for them to separate one from the other, because their skin they're skin encapsulated substance. They're not as thick-skinned, so it's more permeable, and they're more psychic, and their consciousness, more automatically merged because they are telepathic, whereas we're not telepathic, so we can perceive self and not self and a paired other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's they have like a group mind.
Yes.
And it makes me, I think about the control. One thing that kind of perplexes me, I think Professor Joseph Farrell's addressed this. Here you have Nazis infiltrated, right? And they took over the mainstream media. They took over control of the education, rewrote what happened in the World War II, took over Hollywood starting in 1951 with The Day That Stood Still, and Operation Mockingbird. And it basically took over control of our perception. And then you have, obviously, they speak about the Khazarian mafia, and the connections with that in controlling. I don't want to sound anti-Semitic here or anything, but Hollywood be controlling by Jewish elements, and the mainstream media and everything, and so. It doesn't seem like Nazis and Jews really get along together, but there seems to be some collaboration within the cabal of different. I don't really know, but it seems like there's different factions within this cabal that seem to tolerate each other because their agendas are somehow complementary to each other or something. What's your take on that? I'm just curious.
Well, I'll say mine, and then Sasha can say his. But Yahweh is Enlil, and the Enlil people were the Jews, and so he's one faction. And then Enki is, so they get divided into God and Satan. And the Satan is just the ones that the one that lost the war, right? The winning party gets to call the evil one, the satanic one. And so these two brothers have been fighting for hundreds of thousands of years, and then they have their two clans. Well, the one that ended up taking over the whole dung heap here on the planet was Marduk. And there's a long story, and I won't go into it. And so Marduk took the whole system, and he made it into monotheism. He said, I'm everybody. I'm all the gods. I'm everything. And they basically, a lot of them left planet and left rulership to Marduk, who was by birth entitled to rule the earth and actually Nibiru, but he was being denied rulership because of his bloodline, which was mixed with the Alalu clan. A lot of politics, just like our modern royals, right? And so, but that's where you get the two factions. There's two factions vying for the control of the earth and Nibiru and the solar system. But within that, there are some that love humanity, like the Enkyites, because Enki and his clan basically created Homo sapiens sapiens. If we weren't here, they would probably, they probably exist, but they lacked hybrid vigor, so they were no longer able to procreate like we do, and so the cloning process degenerates over time, and so in order to have hybrid vigor, you need to have the ability to procreate. So that's all in the biblical story. That's my take on it. Sash, I'm sure you have yours. What's yours?
Okay, well, to go a little bit further, a long time ago, in the Illyrian system, there were peaceful humanoids, much like us, who had a number of like 140 settled planets, and they had space travel. And the people from the Draco Empire came upon them, and they bombed out several of the planets, including one called Atlan. And all the Lyrians fled to the Pleiades and to other areas to escape from the invading Dracos. And some of them formed a unity kingdom in the Pleiades. Others came to Maldek, a big planet outside Mars, and some of them settled Mars, which was lovely at the time. The Dracos hollowed out a ice comet, which had a rocky core, and they went after the Maldecans, who saw them coming and asked for shelter in Mars, and they went underground with the Martians. Maldek was blown up into the Kuiper belt, and the planet continued. This death planet, the ice comet, went past Mars, sucked off most of the atmosphere. However, the Martians and the Maldecans were safe underground. It went past Earth and sucked the water off of this totally water vapor covered planet and rose up Lemuria and Atlantis and moved on to become Venus. And the Dracos emerged, and they built a hollowed out moon from which to conquer the Earth. And it goes on and on. But basically, the Atlans and the Maldecans, who were brought to Mongolia, the Atlans were brought to Atlantis. They caused the extinction of the dinosaurs and the sinking of Lemuria. There's an extensive history. I shouldn't go into it all, but the Nibiruans were latecomers on the scene, and they were after gold and so forth.
Right. But I have a question for you, Dan. The Day the Earth Stood Still was part of this propaganda. I love that movie. Tell me more about that. What's that?
What was that again, Janet? I'm sorry.
The Day the Earth Stood Still. You said that was part of the
propaganda.
The propaganda of the Nazis.
Oh, well, yeah. By the way, thank you both for your description. Yeah, it sounds about right. And I think it's all about our spiritual, all these challenges for our spiritual growth, or an evolution,
Right.
As far as you're talking about the Jewish control of media and the Nazis' control of the media, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that basically, ultimately, it comes down to the Nibiruans sponsored the people who are in control. They work through the surrogates, and they've been in control of the planet, and they're playing off both sides against each other. Allah was Nanar, who's opposed to Marduk, and just recently, the Galactic Council has sent the Anunnaki orders to knock it off and stop fighting among others, and they're basically playing off against the reptilian revelation scenario, which is what the Dracos are playing out. And I guess I wanted to know what you thought about that, and what you thought about Kim Un, and strategically what's happening, and how that is related to the extraterrestrial phenomenon.
Well, interesting. Kind of keeping up on what Corey Good is saying on some of the stuff, saying that we're on a timeline where we could go either way, where the future could go not so good, where we just become slaves to a reptilian empire, or we become liberated, and we become aware. And it seems that the control of the media. You're just watching. I just sort of observe them. I don't really. When I watch the news, I don't watch it. I just sort of monitor it and see what it's trying to say. And look at all the media and all the stuff that I say to my wife Rebecca. I said, looks like more kill and hurt human programming going on. They're constantly putting these images into our subconscious because they know the power of our co-creative collective consciousness to affect and change reality. And I think this is the thing they're attempting to keep secret. As far back in 1957, all the major universities, they took out about the powers of human consciousness, and it's only in little fragments that people go into quantum physics and study this type of thing. But as far as being in the mainstream education, it's totally vacant.
Right.
And I think it's because they are concerned that we become aware of the power of our consciousness to affect this reality and the future because you're not going to do it through, writing your representative, which I naively thought when we went, from city to city. In fact, I stayed up all night with a programmer friend and pizza, and we wrote a program to fax all the president and all the representatives and senators. I even found a database to contact all the foreign embassies all over the world. And so we had about 30,000 faxes that came in from going to the major cities. And I put them all, the responses from the senators and congressmen and the president. I told people, if you get a response, send it to me. I'll put it up online to see how they're responding. And I put them up on, the webmatrix.net. And you can read what they all said back in, this was before 9/11, it was like after 9/11, everything went off the radar. But it became very, very apparent that they all had been indoctrinated, obviously, of CIA directors and the heads of Joint Chiefs of Intelligence are being denied access, along with presidents, which we had proof from 2 presidential administrations. Obviously, the senators and congressmen are going to be out of the loop as well. And so they were all indoctrinated on how to respond with official letters from NASA and, talking about Project Blue Book, and old stuff like that. So, it's, you're not going to write your congressman. You're not going to be able to contact the media. You're not going to. You can protest, and picket in front of things. It's not going to really make a dent because the majority of people are still watching the evening news, which the person who reads the teleprompter.
So the programming's coming. It started with the television. There was a wonderful book by Preston Nichols called The Music Through Time. And they had recruited him to put subliminals in early programming. And that's why he said, did you ever wonder why you watched the original Star Wars 20 times? He says, could we put this programming in there? But now they have it throughout everything. I mean, here we are on the internet right now. And I have a computer up right now. And it's they continually are sending programming to keep us from our spiritual self, from becoming conscious, enlightened, and aware. And those who do become conscious, they're like sitting outside of the matrix going, now what? I'm awake, but everybody else is asleep, and it's so frustrating. There are many people that are waking up, but what do you do when your brother or sister is still back in that dark box, and their reality is different than yours? And then you get into these fights on the internet and Facebook. I had to unfriend a lot of friends after the last election, like many people, and not tune into it because it was just too harmful to my psyche to endure that level of it's another level of separation. Every time you think that we're getting where we get separated again by somebody who really knows what they're doing. They know psychological manipulation, control, and they keep us managed. We are all being handled and managed quite well. And what to do about it? Sash, what do you think?
Stop participating. Exercise nullity to the degree you can. Boycotts are good. General strikes are. By all means, avoid all violence because it just brings crushing counter-violence.
Right. But I think it's
normalizing is what they do in their people's consciousness. Even the cartoons, Family Guy, all of them. It's all, kill and hurt human programming and destroy relationships is what it is. They know that it was Princeton University did a research, on psychic, abilities, and I thought it was kind of interesting that they found that one person has the power of one person, 2 people have the power of 2 people, but when a man and woman, one woman has the power of 1 and 2 women have the power of 2, but when a man and a woman connect together, and it's like a power 4 times as powerful. But if the man and woman are in love with each other in a relationship, it's like 7 times powerful. They found out. So loving relationships, all the soap operas that women used to watch, is like nothing but, people deceiving and cheating on each other constantly is in the psyche. And then we have all the crime dramas of, Criminal Minds and all of them, CSI Miami, all these different myriad of crime dramas that are constantly putting imagery of people killing and hurting and, this is like constant 24/7 on the media through everything possible. And then you have in movies, you have, all the apocalyptic movies. So all this goes into the psyche of what's possible, human see, human do type of thing.
Wow. So that's where it goes down to that level of controlling our psyche, and it goes back to personal responsibility and what we can do individually. And then we can. That was really powerful about the loving connection between a man and a woman.
Yeah, there's something, universally, when you look at it. I used to work with Dr. Robert Beck, who was researching on the ELF brainwave that the CIA was doing. And, the Russians were doing the over-horizon radar, the woodpecker signal back some time, and it was heterodyning against our energy grid, which is 60 hertz. Theirs is 50 hertz, so they were immune to it. And it was falling within psychoactive windows that would cause the liquid crystals in the brain to go into entrainment within 4 seconds. And what he found was that, and I when I was working with the Naval Electronic Engineering Center on military satellite equipment and stuff like that for about 13 years, I was setting up and making these oscillators. I introduced Dr. Marcel Vogel to Dr. Robert Beck, and that was an interesting exchange. But what happened was the old Navy chief who worked at White Sands with me, who said World War III happened a couple of times, but the ETs got shut down. He was working out there when von Braun was there. He was trying to wrap up the satellite equipment, something you can do in sleep, right? All the time. We did this for years. I accidentally put the oscillator on the frequency that causes the left and right hemisphere, the man and woman, the male and female within us, to desynchronize, which causes spatial disorientation. He was trying to wrap this thing. I had no idea what was going on because I didn't know it accidentally got set. Perfect double-blind experiment. He's trying to wrap this thing, and he just threw his hands down and says, what the hell is going on here? It's like, and I looked at the frequency counter, and I said, oh, my God. But what he did was he flew around the planet, met with, kahuna medicine men and Dutch masters and all these different, Buddhist healers and all these different people who had talent and their conscious working, and he found that their brain waves, normally the left and right hemisphere, the man and woman within us, is like two distinct different people. If you look at the brain waves, they're very unique. But when he found that when they're in a working state of consciousness, he found that the left and right hemisphere worked together and got in perfect phase with each other as one signal, and it amplified. And that frequency which that happened just coincidentally happened to be the Schumann resonance, which was around 7.83 hertz. The Schumann, the one who Maria Orsic got the the information from the Nordics, from the Alberian constellation, that proved viable physics, which got the Nazis off on anti-gravity. So it's kind of interesting that there is this power when, and even the work I did with Marcel Vogel in the laboratory, if you look at the structuring of water and of quartz, quartz is, why is it piezoelectric? Because it's two triangles. One's a positive, one's negative, or you can call it male and female. And in the center, in the ancient days of Pythagoras, way before the Jewish flag and everything, there was a star of creation, which is a 6-pointed star with a dot in the middle. The dot represented creation. It was the balance between the male and the female. And so when you squeeze a crystal, it offsets this positive and negative triad to cause a charge differentiation through trillions of these molecules, which causes your cigarette lighter that has a piezoelectric thing in it to, to make a spark because of the electrical potential that's created. So there's a profound knowledge that is when a man and woman have this power to unite and to cause a creative effect in reality. Are you still there? Hello?
Nope, they dropped off.
Oh.
I'm trying to get them back right now. They fell off. I just showed them fall off.
Okay.
So
anyway.
I heard the last little bit you said.
Yeah, they don't want that information out there.
Well, I don't know what to say. They're not coming back. They're still showing online, so I don't think they got booted. So you going to any of these upcoming conferences that they're...
Pretty much a hermit, just stay up here on the hill with my wife and kind of...
You got an awesome place up there, I know. You said it's burning all around you, right?
Yeah, there's fires 10 miles of us, that the air is so thick with smoke. Yeah, we live off grid out here in the mountains on a mountaintop.
A lot of people don't know that you are off grid like that. I think it's awesome. I wish I could be completely off grid like that.
Yeah, I try to be as self-reliant as possible in a world of questionable infrastructure.
It's definitely some questionable ethics going on, isn't there?
Exactly.
Now, they were speaking of the reptilians. Do you think they're actually involved that high into our government?
I have no idea, I have haven't had a direct interaction like Janet has, and other people who,
Or
I used to think,
in general, put it that way. How's that? That'd make it a little easier.
It's kind of interesting, I used to think people who said they saw UFOs or were making it up just wanted to have attention. And it wasn't until I had one fly 100 feet over my head that all of a sudden, whoa, okay, they are real, yes. And then when people say they see them, I don't have any question or doubt. But then there's a lot of people who said they've, gone on board spacecraft and they've gone on underground bases and that they've actually talked and interacted face-to-face with extraterrestrials. And, for a lot of the mainstream people, that's got to be a hard sell because they don't have any basis to reference that to.
Right. Well, see, myself, I've never had any ET contact, but what I've gathered from all these people I do talk with about UFOs and ET contacts and that, because I'm involved with Janet and TJ Morris and that, and my show, and the people who speak this stuff believe it themselves. That's what gets me. So that and they're not. I don't think they're. A lot of them are making anything up. This is an actual belief on their part.
Well, somebody's piloting those things that are, you have.
I don't. They're there.
You have the combination between the MUFON and the other big agency, tens of thousands of reports, and those are just the people that report. I've never reported anything I've seen, and I've seen some things, and my wife has seen one when I was gone working with Bedinis on some energy project. I took the camera with me, of course, and one appeared out by the balcony from over on the mountains on the other side. A silver classic kind of ship that she saw. So yeah, somebody's driving those things.
Are you speaking about right there where you're at now?
Yes, yeah, where we're at now.
Oh, that's cool. The only thing I've ever seen was back in the 70s. I was in the Navy, and I was out in the middle of the Atlantic, and I seen a light, but it was in space, and it was traveling way faster than any satellite.
Wow, what were you? I was in the Navy too, obviously. What were you doing in the Navy?
I was a bosun mate.
Ah, you're one that keeps everything operating on the ship.
I painted the ship mostly, is what I did. All right, Janet's back. They're telling me to call.
Okay, but we're still on the air, I take it.
Oh yes, sir. Yes, sir. We never stopped. Wait a minute. Call Skype. We will use cell. I just called the Skype. There we go. I think she's back now. Are you there, Janet? It shows them here, but I don't think they can hear us. We can't hear y'all.
Well, all I can say is support alternative media. We do our best.
Call them back, I guess. I don't know.
Let's see. I got a Skype here.
Showing her connected.
Yeah. Well, darn, our last 15 minutes or so here.
Let me call her mobile and see what happens.
Yeah. By the way, the listeners that are listening, the webpage is www.thewebmatrix.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
I don't know why it was. Okay, we're here. We're on our cell phone.
He was in the middle of yelling out his website. Let him go ahead and yell it out.
We were just talking. We were trying to get you back. I was just saying to the listeners, if they want to look at my notes online, is thewebmatrix.net. It's like my online notepad that I keep expanding as I've done a lot of research into the secret space program with witnesses and stuff, and just little tidbits to add to your existing collection of research.
Yeah, well, it's good that you're doing that, and make sure you have it backed up really good because the websites go down. But that's great. I'm sorry we got food in here. I'm not sure what's going on. Our whole Skype went down, and then I had to reboot the computer, and then the computer wouldn't come on. So I'm glad that we're able to join you back here for the last, whatever this is, 15 minutes or so.
Yeah. Well, we left off on about, the left and right hemispheres of the brain and being able to do incredible things when the male and female within us essentially is working in harmony.
Right, and that's what Dr. Lessin and I are both Tantra educators. In our first 15, 20 years of life, we were together. We were teaching Tantra. In fact, we've been invited to go back.
That's right. Tantra. Well, this is highly tantric.
Yes, that's about reintegrating the yin-yang symbol, which has the dot, a white dot and the black, and the black dot and the white. That's the singularity. And Nassim Harriman has animated the yin-yang, and it's a toroid. When you animate it, it's a toroid, and it shows the whole. It was a symbol that was left behind, probably from Enki, who wanted to see humanity evolve, become conscious. His desire was that we would do better than the Anunnaki. We would do better than they. So we're hoping to help people. First of all, go back into your core incidents, your childhood programming and cultural conditioning, religious conditioning, and deprogram yourself individually, and then as a couple, you identify your bonding patterns and see where you go sour and how you can better support each other, and then individually within self to balance your own masculine and feminine. And then, of course, if you get together in loving relationships, that does exactly what your findings are saying, that we create the 7 times the power the power of love, and that can change and shift the entire continuum. And I think that's what the powers that be and whoever they are, the Illuminati, fear the most.
Yes.
Is that humanity has what's called the meta gene. We have meta DNA. We have the ability to do magic. We can do the things on a certain level. Mm-hmm.
This is why I love talking about. Is like, give the listeners something that everybody wants. I would assume anyway that people want to see the most benevolent outcome for this planet, for all beings concerned, and the planet itself. And we have this power of co-creative consciousness, and that's why I wrote this little visualization called Imagine This, which is on the webmatrix.net, that basically is a visualization of going through the history of what's happened on this planet and how it ended up in the future as a positive conscious projection of a very possible reality, because when I wrote it back in some years ago, everything that I wrote has sort of come to pass, where people are becoming consciously aware because of the alternative media of the internet, and it is affecting a global collective consciousness, and I think the transformation is not going to happen, through like what we talked about earlier, contacting your representatives or the media or anything. All that's been compromised. The way that we can fight this is from within, in understanding who we are and the powers of our consciousness and the power of visualization. I wouldn't underestimate that.
John Lennon had a wonderful song, Imagine, and that probably is part of what got him killed. But if we give people somewhere to go through our imagination, Teresa Moore said that the greatest power that humanity has is the ability to image, to imagine. A lot of the species have forgotten how to imagine things, but we can image things. We're very magical. We can manifest that into 3D physicality. So if we imagine a world where we live in peace and harmony. It's not just cliche, but it's an actuality. And we pull it back into how do we do it? What are the steps for it? Because we're in this dark matrix right now. And I've had some conversations with people about like the global economic reset and the basic minimum needs economy and how do we get there from here? And part of it is starting to imagine that future and then backing it down to the doable steps that each of us can do individually and collectively. I don't have all the answers, but, this is part of the download I keep getting from extraterrestrials is this whole system of how level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 civilizations exist. Now, we have this month, I think somewhere around the 20th or 23rd or something, the next Star Trek comes out. It's been 12 years or something since the last Star Trek. And I hope, from what I see from the previews, that they're really going to get behind imagining this future of cooperation. I hope they don't turn into Star Wars. I got really angry with George Lucas because he took my Star Trek and he made it into Star Wars, right? He took the whole paradigm. But we can come back to the Trek. I worked with Gene Roddenberry, and Gene Roddenberry was one of the first whistleblowers, and he was telling us what was going on and what the potential was. Your turn.
I think we're right on the verge of the whole situation going one way or another, and I think we have what we got going for us is the power of that truth has this ability, I believe, to resonate within all beings, because actually, we're all connected to. That's when you douse things to see if something's connecting to the subconscious that knows everything, past, present, and future. The very fact that something's true, it will resonate in any being. But a lie, has this, where it gets caught up. My mother, was born in over in Buenos Aires, so it was English and French. Used an old South American saying that the devil always forgets to put the lid back on the cookie jar. And I think what's happening is we've got so many cookie jar lids all over the place. A lot of people are, seeing these, glitches in this perception matrix that they've created. And I think a lot of people are open, but God, I just hope, like the Marines could come in and take over our mainstream media, from the perpetrators that are controlling the perceptions.
Right. Well, part of controlling the perception is to stop, listening to the program. I won't mention names, but some of the people I know are just Fox News programs. They just teleprogram that their reality is everything that they say, and they can't wait to get to sit down, and watch it again because they got to get another dose of it. It's like an addiction, and that's how they walk through the world. But it's not fun. And even those people that are programmed and that are doing the programming, part of them has a strong desire to be conscious as well. Well, what they fear is what they actually want, and they want to evolve and grow and become enlightened and reconnect with source and have some higher level experiences, and actually they're very brave because they played the dark side. They have played the villain in play, and they were the people upon which we had to repel against. They became the opposing force, and it's very hard to play the villain. And so we're coming to the end, and I talked to Alfred Weber, who we talked about earlier. We're coming to the end of this yugas, and so I expect to see the changes. But towards the end, the polarity will actually expand and perhaps get darker. But when I was 4, I was taken on board a mothership, and I was shown 24 different potential future possibilities for existence, and there were countless others, but these were the 24 most relevant or something. And the dark side was the total apocalyptic, and the planet was blown into smithereens. But the light side was the utopia. But even utopia was kind of boring because there wasn't anything left to do. And they asked me, and when I was there, I was not just a 4-year-old child. I was my eternal self. I had the awareness of who I am from the dawn of my own creation, the dawn of creation, down into inhabiting this avatar and participating as a human in this grand experiment. And what reality do you want to see happen? And so I happened to choose third from the utopia. I thought it'd be nice to have something left to do, right? And then I came back, and that was in 1958. And of course, we had all kinds of people, screwing with the timelines, and we had the Montauk experiments and all those things after. In 63. I guess Montauk people, they did something again with the 20-year anniversary of the Philadelphia experiment, and they took back the timeline. They put it into a more negative timeline. Whoever that is, I'm not sure who it is, but that's part of Stuart Swervo's story. And then, of course, they did something again in 83. But in 63, when they took us into the negative timeline, that's when we went down the road of the Kennedy's assassinations and Martin Luther and all those things that unfolded then. So here we are. It's 2017, and I think we can, but we have to really think we can. We have to believe it, and believing means be living it, taking the concepts and internalizing them. So one of the things that my guidance says is if you say something and it kind of comes out weird or sideways and it sounds cruel or it's not loving, take it back and say it again, but breathe it down through your heart chakra. And our heart chakra is our center. Bring it into your center and say it again. It's like switching the channels. If you're going down, you're watching some bad negative program, just switch it to something light. If you're going down the highway and you want to get up to the exit, which is light and loving, then you have to gradually start getting over there. But you can keep shifting lanes until you get to this objective that we imagine. And can you read your thing, or is it too long? The one about imagination.
I agree. This whole planet should be a happy, loving experience. It's not full of the deceptions and everything. Your awareness of where you're at, has taken you some time, and all of us have been, generationally indoctrinated into these false realities. It's, I almost wonder, the full story of it all really keeps its own best secrecy because it's just too much for the average person. It's been generationally indoctrinated in a completely false reality that it's just too. It took me, like several oh my gods, oh my God, this is real. Oh my God, it's like you start seeing all this stuff, and then and the proof behind it. It's not like people are just telling stories. There's documented proof, and there's many, many witnesses behind it. But how to get people, I think there needs to be some type of program that helps deprogram everybody from the bad programming, to get back most of the people on this planet to the full reality that's been hidden from them.
Well, I think there is positive programming. Yes. How do we get people back from this negative paradigm into something more loving and conscious? And there are some things I kind of watch different shows like an anthropologist going, what are we doing here? What's the media doing? And there's a lot of I don't watch negative things. I'll check out an episode and I'll go, that's too dark. But there are some wonderful shows out there, which is programming, right? They're all programs, television programs. And a lot of our programming comes from the media. So somebody's waking up and getting conscious. There's a show called Stranger Things, and it's about this child that was part of MK Ultra. And it's like, wow, they're putting the truth out there. She didn't even have a name. She was called Seven, and they used her to go through the different portals and dimensions, and to remote viewing and the mind control and child slavery and everything. And it's like, it's coming out and it's right there in the media. and they're going, well, somebody's being allowed to tell the truth behind this. So something's happening. It's amazing. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, the very fact that we're having this conversation and there's people listening to us, I don't know how many are listening to us, but the very fact they're thinking about what we're talking about too. And all these different minds and more minds, that's why alternative media is so powerful, is that when you think about it, it's affecting the collective mind.
Yes, and so everything we do affects the morphogenic field. So if you're sitting there feeling powerless, hopeless, just do nice, kind, loving things in your own life with the people around you, and every act of kindness goes into the field. And if we did it, all 7 billion of us, we would have the reality and potential that we know is potential. Right before it's kind of like the Berlin Wall. Remember, that was one reality we had growing up as a child of the 60s. It was like the Berlin Wall, and there were people that couldn't escape, and we had all these horror stories, and then all of a sudden one day Tom Brokaw was on and it was over. And we can accomplish the same thing, but it begins with each person. So just
exactly
acts of kindness in your life and spread it around. Return something hateful with a kind action, like forgiveness. Forgive us all, because we've all participated in this paradigm, which, we actually have a pretty nice civilization, but we don't want to destroy it now. We work together generation after generation and created this incredible world of beauty, and we're trading. We have goods from China and India, and we're all trading. We are one world. And this separation is artificial. If we just
Aloha, Sasha.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And we'll be right back after this message.
You need some more in speed records in this day and age. You need coverage.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping off cameras in your face?
Those root weevils write history.
Many of you know that quote by Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. Well, you can, and Event Horizons will give you those truths. So when you're mad as hell and not going to take it anymore from that memorable senior network, you'll know just what to do. We will draw you in and become your news addiction at Event Horizons. Join us Monday through Friday.
Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.